This is an early morning update on Tropical Storm Arlene on this Wednesday, June 29th. As of the 4 a.m. advisory, Tropical Storm Arlene is packing 40-mile-per-hour sustained winds while moving toward the west-northwest at 8 miles per hour. The current thinking is that Tropical Storm Arlene will make landfall near Tampico, Mexico, late Wednesday night and early Thursday morning as a moderate tropical storm. You are now looking at the tropical storm force wind speed probabilities, and apparently the highest probabilities are near and surrounding the Tampico metropolitan area. And of course, if you live in South Texas, the chances of any tropical storm-like winds are rather slim. In fact, the odds are less than about 5%. This is a look at some of the 6Z tropical model plots. As you can see, there is a fairly strong consensus that is in line with the National Hurricane Center forecast track. If anything, the GFDL and HWRF model solutions should more than likely be dismissed, as they are currently already too far west in the initial heading of the storm. As mentioned in the official product from the National Hurricane Center, Arlene is still moving off toward the west-northwest, and as of these forecasts, the GFDL and HWRF show an immediate turn toward the left, with more of a southwest solution commencing shortly after. That appears to be somewhat unlikely at this point in time. What is also even more unlikely is this more northerly motion as suggested by the CLP5 model, but keep in mind that that is an old climatological model that only keeps historical tracks of tropical cyclones in mind, and it's really outdated compared to some of the other model data that is available to forecasters in this day and age. The intensity models also have a fairly strong consensus that Arlene will make it to a moderate tropical storm before making landfall. Here's the 50-knot line. As we can see, a lot of models take it to around 45 to 50 knots before the storm begins to level off and then begin to dissipate. I will say, though, that any models that do show any type of weakening over the next 24 hours are more than likely incorrect, as satellite and upper air analysis would indicate that conditions are favorable for continued development until the center passes the coastline. This was a microwave satellite taken early in the morning hours, and as we can see, the overall banding features were not that abundant just yet, but this was an improvement compared to what we saw yesterday afternoon. And I fully suspect that since this was taken, it looks as though on regular satellite that Arlene has become a bit better organized. So by the time we get another microwave pass sometime later today, Arlene will be much more impressive on this type of imagery. The low-level vorticity max is also the strongest we've seen so far. The latest precipitable water animation indicates that more moisture is beginning to work its way into the southwest Gulf of Mexico and Bay of Campeche, and it also confirms that low-level vorticity is on the increase. Upper-level winds continue to become more favorable. We now have a well-established upper-level ridge building across much of the western half of the Gulf of Mexico and southwest Bay of Campeche, as seen on the latest SIMS wind shear analysis. This can also be seen on the regional water vapor imagery. Here we are in the western Gulf, where we have quite an abundance of mid to upper level moisture now, with any dry air now being kept at bay over much of the northern Mexico area along into the Rio Grande Valley of southern Texas. In the meantime, we have a mid to upper level trough now dipping across much of the central and eastern Caribbean, which is only helping to enhance the poleward outflow channel of Tropical Storm Arlene over much of the northwest Caribbean and southeast Gulf of Mexico. Also notice how much of the convective activity directly surrounding the storm is no longer being directly influenced by any significant wind shear, as we don't see much in the way of the cloud cover being blown off. The subtropical ridge that is going to protect Texas from experiencing any significant weather from our tropical cyclone is now well in place. As we can see, this is the mid-level steering flow. Our upper-level ridge is located just to the west of Dallas-Fort Worth this morning, with the tropical cyclone now moving more toward the west directly underneath this area of ridging. This is the same ridging that is keeping Texas high and dry. They are desperately needing rainfall, but you can see where the problem lies. The mid-level ridging is centered directly over the state, and all of the precipitation is completely surrounding the state of Texas, along with our tropical cyclone. It looks as though the wind speeds are definitely going to increase later this morning when the hurricane hunters fly into the storm. As we can see, just within the last 6 hours on the nighttime infrared, convection is really beginning to increase where the low-level circulation is located. It's really hard to pinpoint exactly where it is since we don't have the hurricane hunters directly under the storm, and we don't have a good visible image since we don't have daylight. but I highly suspect that once the hurricane hunters fly into this system later today, they will find a strengthening tropical storm Arlene. In fact, based on what I'm seeing, I would not be completely shocked if the National Hurricane Center has to slightly increase their intensity forecast for the final landfall. I do not expect that Arlene will become a minimal hurricane. It will likely remain below hurricane status, as indicated by nearly every single model member. But nevertheless, this is going to be a strengthening storm as it comes inland due to the favorable upper level conditions and favorable sea surface temperatures. In terms of rainfall, we can get up to 9 inches of rain in interior portions of mountainous Mexico. That is being forecast by the Hydrometeorological Prediction Center. And as we can see, much of Texas remains high and dry, with only about 1 to 2 inches anticipated in Brownsville, Texas. We've also taken a look at some of the tornado parameters for southern Texas, and fortunately in this case the tropical storm is too weak and too far to the south to generate any type of tornado risk whatsoever. So that's a brief look at how things are shaping up for today. It still looks like Tampico is in the bullseye. The official forecast track is still ever so slightly south of them, but they're still going to be in the heart of tropical storm force conditions and heavy rainfall if that verifies. If anything, I still think the track is going to end up a bit north of Tampico, but not by a whole lot. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter because this is a fairly large system. So even if you are several dozens of miles away from where the center makes landfall, the overall effects will be the same, with gusty conditions and the main threat being torrential rainfall and the threat of mudslides, especially if you live in mountainous terrain. So that's your tropical weather update. We will have another update on Tropical Storm Arlene and the remainder of the tropical Atlantic and Eastern Pacific by later this afternoon. Thanks for tuning in.